Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started now. So, hi, I'm Allison Foster. I'm the Executive Secretary for Delta Mega, and just want to welcome you all to the terrific webinar we have today on creating a professional CV. It's the end of a series of professional development webinars we've had all year. So, if you want to look at recordings from some of the others, you can go to Delta Mega and look at our webinar series for 2025. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to my colleague, Dr. Sugimoto Masuda, who's with the University of Hawaii. And Jeanelle, I'm going to let you go ahead and take it away.
Okay, thank you so much. Let me do my thing here. Alrighty. Can you all give me an okay or thumbs up for the screen and everything is okay? Thank you. And let me see where my Zoom windows went.
And while we're doing that, if y'all have questions or comments, go ahead and put them in either the chat or the Q&A, and then we'll take a look at the end and answer all your questions.
Thank you. Why don't we, if you guys are able to, just we have a chat, I believe that we can all see. So just a hello, you're from whichever university. And if you can let me know kind of what career stage you're at, if you're undergrad, grad student, or already graduated and looking at applying in the workforce, just to give me a sense of kind of who's in the audience, if you guys are able to, not if you're driving, obviously, or somewhere where you shouldn't be typing on your phone, but that will help me give me a little bit of a heads up. So with that, good morning. It's morning here. I'm Jeanelle Sugimoto Matsuda. I'm an associate professor here at the University of Hawaii at Manoa, island of Oahu in Hawaii. I've been involved with Delta Omega for some years now. I had the honor of serving on the National Executive Board. Allison, you all should know, she's the one that sends you all of the important information that you need for the chapter, for your presentations, for attending meetings. So please, if you see things from her, please read them and respond. And I really enjoy giving this presentation. I try to do it several times a year for our students here and for my research team. And I became more passionate about doing it because now I'm on the other side of applications of grad school applications, and then job applications for new faculty. It's really has become even more important to me to let people know ahead of time, especially when you're still students, some tips and tricks for applying, whether it's to another degree program or a job, no matter where you're going in the workforce. I'm going to talk specifically about building an academic CV today, but I think quite a few of the lessons that at least I've learned over the years can be useful for whatever it is that you guys are applying for. I also want to say I'm very, very low maintenance. So please just ask questions, put things in the chat. And I think I can see hand raises or thumbs up or things like that. Sorry, I'm not sure exactly what I can or cannot see in the webinar feature, but I want to make sure that I cover things that you guys are wondering about. And the first question I always get is, are you going to share your slides? Yes, I will share the slides afterwards. So Allison will get them, and I will also be sending a CV template so that you can have something to work off of if you are just starting this process. So with that, hello, nice to see you all. Caveats. I always start with caveats because as I tell my students here, Jeanelle's way is not the only way of doing things. And there are other templates, there are other ways, there are other strategies. What I'm going to present happens to be what I was mentored in, but also, again, as I mentioned, now having sat on the other side of admissions committees and job search committees, these are the things that have been helpful to us as reviewers. And again, there are things that I wish down the line or previously in my career, somebody had really sat me down and really spelt these out really clearly. And I do want to say I had wonderful mentors that are still my mentors today. But again, you don't really see the nuances of what people are looking for until you're on the other side, until you're actually doing the reviewing and having to sift through applications and things like that. So thank you all for continuing to introduce yourselves. Looks like we have some current students, we have some workforce looking for continuing ed. So thanks all for joining us. And again, I'll do my best to keep an eye on the chat. But just really, if I miss something, just put it in again or just flag me down somehow. Okay. So for the bulk of today's presentation, I am going to talk about the CV and the different main pieces of the CV, but I just want to remind us that it's just one piece of the puzzle when you're applying for a degree program or a job, right? At the center there, I say, the CV or the resume, whatever context you're applying for, is really what I call your life in a document. And I'm going to talk about some just cross-cutting tips for keeping that updated before we go into the individual sections. But of course, you all know, having gone through programs or been in a program now or going through job applications, that's just one piece of the puzzle. So there's really at the top left, I call your story, your words, and that's whether it's the cover letter, whether it's an essay. I'm going to say a little bit about that at the end because I think it deserves equal attention compared to the CV. I also sorry, I'm like pointing and you can't see that, but kudos or references or letters of rec, we'll talk about that a little bit at the end if I have time. The evidence, quote unquote, in terms of the supporting documentation, things like copies of your degrees, transcripts, test scores, etc. And then at the bottom right, what I've called examples. So things that demonstrate your skill or your wonderfulness. So things like writing samples, copies of professional products like brochures or reports or, now with digital media, app development or website development, anything that really can demonstrate or show what a wonderful professional that you are. And all of these things put together are the package, right, that you want to put forward, whether you're applying for a position, a job position, or a program. So again, I just want to contextualize what we're going to talk about today, because even though we're going to focus mainly on the CV, it's complemented by everything else that you put work into as you apply for a program or for a job. All right. So I think this might be review for some of you, but if you're brand spanking new to the world of academic CVs, welcome. These are the main sections. And again, in the beginning, I said, these are Jeanelle's caveats. These are the main things that I've seen in my work, both applying for things as well as reviewing applications. And this is the ordering that I was mentored to list things in. However, like I said, if you have a really important mentor and they're like, no, do it this way, then of course I don't want to override things that your main mentor has been telling you. But this is kind of a generic flow for you to follow if you don't have somebody like that that's available to you. So we're going to go through the sections in the green, the red, and the blue. But at the top, I just want to make a couple notes about education, licensure, and then our professional work experience. I added in the note at the top right there that says, please don't forget to list current or upcoming experiences. And obviously you're not creating or making things up, or that's not your wish list. But if something has been confirmed and it's coming, as in I was just accepted to this degree program and I'll be starting next month, please make sure to list that down. And I added that in yesterday, as I was thinking about applications for graduate school or a program. And I often advertise for graduate research positions in my lab. And the number one criteria for being a graduate research assistant, at least in our program, is that you're a grad student. And so sometimes students will apply and forget to put that they've been accepted and that they're incoming. And because you're not in the program yet, I don't know you, and I don't know that for sure you're in the program. So right off the bat, I'm unable to process your application because I'm not even sure that you're a grad student. So please make sure to include things that are upcoming, confirmed but upcoming, to make sure you add those in. And then in the template, you'll see some other tips and tricks that I have for each of these sections. So the rest of the sections fall into what we call the 3 pillars of academia: teaching, research, and service. And that's what I have in the bubble on the right there. And we'll go through each of these categories. But regardless of what context, what type of position, what type of program you end up in academia, you will have to touch each of these 3 pillars. The amount that you put emphasis on, or the amount of time that you spend on each one, will depend on, of course, your program, your position, whatever it is that you get accepted for. But these are the general 3 that we always have to cover, whether we're applying for something or if you're already in an academic position going up for promotion or tenure, things like that. Okay. So I just want to cover a couple of cross-cutting suggestions before we get into the nitty-gritty of the individual sections. My first suggestion is to have one centralized document that you update regularly. And if you're like me, if I start having multiple versions of something, I'm going to eventually forget to update one of them. And then I'm going to end up with different versions, and that's just going to be annoying. So have one centralized document that you constantly are adding to. And then from there, as it says, you can expand or shrink, or you can customize based on what you're going to use the document for. Because the CV might look a little bit different depending if you're applying for a research position versus a program versus a community-based program or whatever. So, but you want to have one centralized thing to just dump everything into. And then the second bullet there, the number or diversity of categories will increase along with your experiences. And I always make sure to say this because students will come in, very early career folks, and say, well, I don't have a lot to put in there. And if you see the template, I don't want you to get discouraged that like, I don't have things to put in each category. That's okay at this point, your early career, or you're just starting out. So of course you might consolidate some categories or just not include some categories for now, but don't worry, the number and diversity of categories will diversify as you gain more experience. And then finally, in the bold there is a way to count almost everything you do. And I really mean this. I don't mean make up things or invent experiences and be dishonest. But there is a way to count almost everything you do in your professional life on your CV. So I tell people, and again, my mentors have told me, as you scour your files, you start a running list of things to add. You've got to look through your calendar. What have you been doing this past week, this past month? How are you reflecting all of those professional experiences on the CV? Because there is a way to count almost everything, and really take credit for it. Take credit for the things and the places where you spend that professional time and energy. Make sure that it's reflected and you are getting credit for it on the document. So my next general suggestion is the name of the game is organization. So whatever format you land on, whatever ordering, the name of the game is organization. And so some of you who have actually already served, maybe you've already served on search committees or hiring committees. The first thing you are tasked with as a hiring committee is to do an initial screening of all the applications. And basically it's finding and counting and checking things off a box. So you've all applied for jobs and there's a set of minimum qualifications and then there's desirables. So at that point, we're going through and saying minimum, do you meet the minimum? Check, 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 check. Or if you're applying for a program, there's some minimums that the program is looking for. Like X amount of public health experience, or if you're coming into a master's degree, do you have the bachelor's degree? Do you have different types of experiences? And so the easier you can make that for us as the reviewer, the better. Because the more I have to spend time looking for it or hunting, then it's really working against you, because at that point, we're just trying to make sure you have checked a lot of those initial boxes before we proceed further. And so this is where those of you who are very good with making things aesthetically pleasing, subheading sections, nice lines, formattings, making page breaks so that if you have a table or something and it looks really messy when it's cutting across 2 pages, fix that. Make sure that it's visually something that looks nice, but also helps us as the reviewer look for things readily. And then the second portion there says generally accepted is to list things in reverse chronological order so the newest stuff at the top for each section. So this does help with counting or tallying, both for you as well as for the reviewer. So especially if you're if you're already in academic position, you're going up for tenure or promotion, and you're trying to look for or trying to demonstrate increasing maturity or just progress since last application, this kind of helps with that as well. And it just creates those nice cutoffs to say, since I graduated with my master's or since I did my doctorate, I've got a total of this many publications, but since then, I've been even more productive, or this is what I've been doing since getting my degree. So it helps to create those kind of counting or tallying cutoffs. But the bottom line is be consistent. So whatever conventions or ways of organization that you land on that are comfortable for you and make sense for what you're trying to present, just be consistent with it throughout the document. So it's very confusing when we go through a CV and some things are chronological, other things are reverse chronological. The headings are inconsistent, or just things are a bit all over the place, right? You don't want that kind of disorganization to take away from the content. What you really want you want to serve up that content for us, so that it's very easily like, okay, I can see, oh, great, I've got that. Okay, that's very nicely organized. Think of it almost like grant writing. If you've written grants before, is you want to make things very plain, very organized so that we can make sure, okay, you've got all that. And it helps us to advance the application to the next stage. Okay, so now let's hop into the different sections. And of course, like I said earlier, do not be freaked out that you don't have something to put in each of these sections. But also, most of the time, people have experiences that doesn't occur to them to put on the CV or that could fit in one of these categories. So I'll try to give examples of both of those. So the first section being teaching, mentoring, and training. Of course, this is one of those core pillars of academia, is teaching, bringing up the next generation of the workforce. And I've kind of ordered these in the order that we just traditionally see them in the CV. The first being formal courses. And if you've done these already, these are the things that you want to include, the title, etc. And then specifically, these are the things you want to distinguish between. So classes that you've independently taught, co-taught, whether you were a TA or a practicum, teaching practicum student, even guest lectures. So even if you've did a one-off lecture for a class and it was on an area of expertise for you, please track that if you're not already tracking that, because that is a form of teaching. We also want to differentiate classroom versus online versus hybrid teaching because different programs and jobs require different things. And then we want to highlight any new courses or things that you've extensively revamped or curricula that you've developed, because that's really another level of teaching. Not only can you teach in a classroom format, but do you understand pedagogy? Do you understand curriculum development? Those are things that you want to keep a tab on as well. And then other things on the right, experiences like mentoring. So again, this comes into play for everybody, of course, but especially if you're at the level where, I'm not at the point where I'm teaching formal courses myself. Maybe you're a TA, so definitely count those things. Maybe you're doing some guest lectures here or there. But mentoring definitely counts in this arena of teaching. And that can be either serving formally as a formal appointed or asked member of somebody's committee or as an advisor. However, if you're, for example, like a senior TA or doctoral level TA in a lab, and you're mentoring and training the undergrads that come through the lab, please count that. That's teaching and mentoring. Even though you don't have a formal prescribed relationship, as a committee member, that's still a relationship that you spend professional time on and that you should get credit for. So in your main document, what I do is I actually track the students' names that I mentor. And for if my CV gets posted publicly in certain places, I'll redact the names. But for me, I do just track that just to make sure, did I get everybody? Am I reflecting the time periods correctly, etc. And the last thing in that category is training. So if you do trainings for outside of 3 credit or traditional courses, but you do trainings in the community or you train others for professional development, for example, please keep track of those, just like you would keep track of presentations at a conference. Keep track of any trainings that you're doing for a community or other professionals. And so for myself, my area of research is suicide prevention and mental health. So I do a lot of trainings outside of my regular teaching. So I'll be asked to train physicians, or I teach community members about how to look for warning signs of suicide and for mental health resources. And all of those get tracked under this training category. So that last bubble there that says things to keep on file. So this is more for those who are looking to you're about to get into an academic job or you're already in an academic job. And these are things that you're going to be keeping for promotion or tenure. But even if you're early career, if you're just starting out as a student, if you think that you'll be aiming towards an academic position, it's never a bad time to start just keeping files of things, because eventually you only get busier and it will only get harder to track these things down later. So things to keep on file. If you do teaching or training, just keep copies of your materials. So your syllabi, especially, evaluations, definitely, because a lot of applications and especially tenure promotion are about showing data or evidence to demonstrate your effectiveness as a teacher or a researcher. Please notate that note there about making your own evaluation form if needed. So what I used to do even before I was teaching full classes is, I was guest lecturing here and there, just trying to get more experience and exposure for teaching. And I had my own Google form, just maybe 5 questions that I would bring a link to or put a QR code, or, in the olden days, you just bring a handout, a paper pencil one, and you just say, hey, for these last few minutes of my presentation, do you guys just mind doing a quick evaluation to help me improve what I'm doing? And that did, of course, help me in terms of reading the comments and improving my teaching style. but also it's creating some data or evidence when you don't have a formal type of online evaluation because you're not yet a regular instructor. So that was data that I could use for my first academic job application and say, you know, I've not done these 3 credit courses yet, but I've done 25 guest lectures, and consistently people say that I'm a good lecturer, or these are the comments that they've given. So again, I just like to put that out there, especially if you're a student, if you're just early career. If you're like, well, I don't have teaching evals because I don't teach formally in the system yet. Well, there's always opportunity to create your own data or evidence if you need it. Okay. So again, I'll pause here, make sure if you have any questions, just throw them in the chat. I'm happy to address them as we go along. And see, the thing about webinars, I can't see you all. So if anybody is raising your hand or making gestures at me, I don't know. So just put things in the chat, please, if there's anything I can address for you. Okay. So let's move along to scholarship or research. And of course, everybody knows, right, that main currency that we have, for better or worse, in research and scholarship right now is publications. But it's not the only form of currency. That's why we'll go through all of the different categories. So of course, the top of the chain here being those articles in refereed or peer-reviewed journals. And I do want to mention, not only do you want to include things that have already been published, you want to include things that are in press, so accepted but not yet put out there or available publicly. But also, please include things that you've already submitted. It's a way to show productivity. So not only are you looking at the things that have already been published, but I'm still being productive. I'm still out there submitting, revising, working on resubmits or things like that. So those are other categories that you can include. And then here's just a example listing of other types of publications that are non-peer reviewed, but definitely you want to include them on the CV. So things like books, book textbooks, book chapters, technical reports, or whatever it is that you call them in your area, white papers, agency reports, even if you've drafted policy briefs, protocols for an agency or organization, professional guidance documents. For example, if you authored or you helped to author a guidance document for physicians on best practices for screening for colon cancer or something like that, that's definitely a scholarly publication and you want to include that. But unfortunately, it's not peer reviewed, but it's in that category of professional publication. So you want to make sure to include that. And then any other articles in other periodicals. So newspaper, media, any type of like commentary, like even a citizen's letter, those kinds of thing in your local newspaper. Even if you publish in your university or your student newsletter, all of those things count as writing. Of course, they're not going to count in the peer-reviewed category, but you should count them and make sure that they have some kind of place on the CV. So here's some other information for each publication, specifically for peer-reviewed. Of course, now that there are DOI numbers, you should include them. That's part of proper APA formatting now. The best practice is to bold your name so people can see where you fall in the order of authorship. And as many of you already know, in academia, order matters. So with your first author versus middle versus your senior author, if you can bold your name, that helps us as the reviewers see like, well, great, you've got a nice variety. You've got first author, you've got supporting author. That's very nice to see. And then citation style, unless where you're applying for or the program you're applying for has a recommendation or requirement, I use APA because that's just what I'm most comfortable with and I know the best. But whatever it is you choose, be consistent. So if you're going to use some other type of citation style, make sure you use it throughout. So all of my entries, I make sure to update anytime APA changes, but it's all APA style just to be consistent. Then at the bubble at the bottom there that says things to keep on file, again, you can kind of see I'm trying to build your habits now to make sure that you're good record keeping, doing good record keeping. So the actual papers or publications, and especially in the climate where things appear or disappear from the internet these days, always download so that you have a copy for yourself. And of course, keep links or websites. But for other things like peer review papers, things you want to keep. So if you have reviewer comments and you've responded to those reviewer comments, impact factors of journals you've published in, and it's eventually not for application, but for those of you, if you're already a job and you're going up for tenure promotion, at least my university requires us to put percentages to estimate the extent of each author's contributions. So in this paper, I did about 50% of the work. My co-authors each did 25 or whatever. It's an estimate, but it is something that eventually, if you're in an academic job, you're going to have to keep. And it's very difficult to remember if you did that paper 10 years ago. So it's something that you just want to keep in mind. So for someone looking to get more experience, they can qualify instructor and shooter. How do you get experience? Yeah, that's a good question in terms of especially teaching, right? It's kind of a catch-22. So thank you for your question. That I can't teach a 3-credit course yet because I don't have my doctorate, but I'm trying to get my doctorate. But then I don't qualify or whatever because I don't have that experience, right? So generally, when we look at applications, especially for entry-level assistant professor and instructor positions, there is an understanding that, yeah, you'll have less teaching, you won't have those formal 3-credit courses. But all of those other experiences that I had out here definitely count. So guest lecturing, like you mentioned, if you're a TA or a practicum student, if you're mentoring others, if you're doing trainings in the community, please count all those things. And I like what you had in your commentary about reaching out to people. Yes, please do. You can definitely reach out to instructors, especially if there's a topic area that you already are rocking it at. Like I'm a great speaker about social determinants of health, or I have an already packaged presentation on making CVs or cover letters. Those are things definitely you can just reach out and say, hey, I'm in this program. I'm looking to get more teaching experience. I am very happy to lecture on and list the bullet points of what you can lecture on. If you're ever in need of a guest lecturer, please reach out to me. And that's definitely something you can do. And it's great because especially as instructors, we're always looking for guest lecturers on different things. So please make yourself it known that you're looking for those experiences. What does this actually look like if you're no longer a student and you've already completed your doctorate? So especially if you've already done your doctorate, but you're not yet in an academic position, you can be brought on, again, it's different at different universities. You can be brought on as a lecturer for an entire class. So at the University of Hawaii, our program, for example, there's always at least one puka or one hole in the teaching schedule for the following semester because somebody's on sabbatical or someone's on leave or just teaching assignments got switched around. So we're always looking for at least one instructor for the following semester. But similarly, like you said about reaching out to instructors, just send something to the chair of the department and say, hi, I'm a recent graduate or whatever, looking to gain teaching experience. Here's my CV. And so if you have any teaching needs in any of these areas, I'm more than happy to do that. So bottom line is to reach out and make people aware that you're available, you're interested. and these are the things that I can very readily or easily teach a class on, then I'm sure they'll, maybe there might not be immediate opportunity, but people will have that in mind to say, oh, great, we've got so-and-so to pull if we need those types of instructors. So yeah, if you already have a doctorate, you can definitely be brought in as like an ad hoc type of lecturer for the semester or for one course. And from there you build, right? You've done a full course now, you've done syllabus development, now you've got some teaching evaluations, and that can help you build towards a formal academic appointment. Yeah. So I hope that answered your question, but if not, put a follow-up question if you need to. But thank you. Okay. So let's move on to scholarship and presentations. So of course, all of you presenting at APJ, right? Those are conference presentations. Some are refereed and some are not, peer-reviewed or not. Sometimes you even get invited. You will get to the point where people seek you out because of your expertise. And that's really even above peer review, right? That's you being sought out and invited because of your work, your experience. So those really actually go at the top, even above peer review. So we've got invited, we've got peer review, and in academia, the progression, the developmental progression goes from local, national to international. So when you're just starting out, you might have them all clumped together. However, you do want to notate which conference you're presenting at in the list. But eventually, as your list gets longer, you might want to split them out. Like these are local, these are national conferences. And if you ever do international, that's a great one. Formatting, we just say cite like a publication, or if you use APA, right, follow that APA formatting. And just like publications, choose a citation style and be consistent throughout all the categories. And then other scholarly products, of course, the categories will depend on your work, your discipline, what you're doing, your type of research you're doing. So it could be white papers, government things, software, media, video, or film. If you've made PSAs or brochures or curricula, etc., like all of the above, right? So anything, like I said, there's a way to count almost everything you do. Anything that you are putting professional energy into or working on, please list that. Make sure that you're credited for it in the CV. Okay. So the last part of scholarship or research is extramural funding. And as the top right bubble says, this includes even if you've just been employed on a project that has grant funding or contract funding, please list it. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you were the PI or principal investigator and you were the one that brought in the money. But if you've worked on an extramurally funded project, please list it. And these are the things that you'll include, the grant number, etc. And these are all things that you can get from your supervisor. It is 100% okay to ask your supervisor for these things because they've got it handy anyway, because they've got to list it as well. Because what this tells us is that even though you weren't the grant writer per se, your working experience on a grant brings some additional skills or experiences. So it comes with certain parameters or IRB protocols or whatever. It comes with reporting, evaluation indicators, or whatever it is based on the funder. But there is a certain set of additional skills that come along working on a grant or an extramurally funded project, as opposed to kind of a side project that many of the faculty do have. Those are important as well, but it's important to note that these are extramurally funded projects that I worked on. And these are the categories of things that you can include. So things that are funded and you're working on right now, previous work on things that were funded. And then for those of you who are actually putting out applications for funding, things that were approved but not funded, and even submissions that you put out but were not approved. So again, showing productivity. right? So even like I said, papers that are out there that are submitted, even though they've not been approved yet, it's showing that I'm actively working, I'm actively putting out applications, so showing that type of productivity. Okay, so last bit about the, sorry, Zoom windows. Sorry, I missed a question. For conferences, do you split up oral versus poster? Uh, I do not. The main thing actually is local, national, and international. So at least for the way that I was mentored in my university, a national presentation is a national presentation, whether it's a round table, an oral, a poster, or somewhere in between. You should note it though, when you put the entry, say your name, the author's title, blah, blah, blah. And then I will just say poster presentation at American Public Health Association or oral or roundtable or whatever. But you can keep them in the same list. So thank you for that question. Sorry, too many windows at one time. Okay. So the last piece of the CV is service. So depending on how your university looks at this, what type of position you're in, everybody's got to have some kind of service, but the amount and how the proportion works out compared to everything else depends. But everybody's generally got to have it. And I don't know, my perspective on service is if you're not giving back to your school, your community, and your discipline, then why are you doing what you're doing? But anyway, so there's different levels or types of service as is I'm trying to put on this slide. One is to your department or school, so really more internal. And then there is to the university as a whole, so anything outside of your department. And then on the next slide, we'll talk about outside of university. But so there's some examples here: membership in standing committees, university governance. In our department, we have a student Hui or student group that is our leadership group. So that's definitely something we want them to list. And then through that student group, some of them actually get recruited to serve on faculty committees because we like to have student voice on our committees. But any of that type of service definitely include. And then there's, of course, other opportunities that depending on where you are and your university activities that are outside of your department, but within the bounds of your institution. So, for example, I'm a scholarship reviewer for our campus-wide undergraduate scholarships. So that's not specific to my department. It benefits the whole campus. Or if you serve on the IRB or something like that, that's campus-wide. Those would be things that are outside your department, but within your campus as a whole. And yes, I'm sharing everything, so don't worry. Okay. So here's the other types of service or levels of service: professional, service to your profession, discipline, and the community. So service to profession might be a reviewer, being a reviewer, right? Reviewing peer-reviewed publications, reviewing abstracts for conferences, helping or supporting or organizing conferences or workshops. And then of course, there's other service that's beyond just the profession. So the broader community. So serving on boards or work groups, helping a community organization with their research or evaluation. And this is really where, back to what I kept saying, is there's a way to count everything. So in my work, my research is very community engaged. So I do a lot of community work. And sometimes they'll ask, hey, like it's outside of what we're doing, but we've got this other project going on. Do you mind a meeting for us to pick your brains about the research design, or just how can we get some funding for this? Sure, like I'll spend a couple hours with them and brainstorm and kind of give them some technical advice. That's TA, that's consultation, and that's outside of what I'm already getting paid for. So I definitely want to list that down, that that's 2 hours of professional effort that, I was very honored to do and blessed to do, but it's something else that I'm gonna make sure that I quote unquote get credit for or list down on the CV. Okay, so let me just make sure. No questions. Okay. All right. So the last piece, and again, sometimes in some CVs, I'll see some of these in the beginning, but I was always taught that this is kind of the wrap up of the CV, is basically everything else, things that didn't quite fit into teaching, research, and service. So things like honors, awards, memberships in professional agencies. So if you're a APHA member, student member, please put that down. Professional training and other skills certifications, like software. I can do SPSS or this, and this. In my field of suicide prevention training, I will list off which curricula that I'm certified in and can deliver trainings in. So basically anything else that you want to make sure that you capture, especially like awards, right? Scholarship awards or department awards for students, all of those kinds of things can count here. Okay, so let me just pause, make sure I didn't miss any questions. And I have just a couple more slides to talk about the story part, and then I will be done and I'll stop talking. But like I said, please put any questions that you have that I can address throughout. Okay. All right, so I just want to say a little bit on beyond the CV. Like in the beginning, I said, I want to contextualize the CV. That's this inventory of your life, right? But the other half is your story. And you want to convey that story to the reviewer, to the reader as clear as possible. And my little very low budge Venn diagram here shows that what you're trying to do is match your background and expertise with whatever it is you're applying for. And that intersection is the story. What is that story? The why, the story that needs telling, and that matching and integration of you, yourself, your story, what you want, what you are applying for, and making that argument for the best overlap or the best fit. And that's what we're trying to do here. So I've got just a couple pieces of advice as you tell your story. And the story is different, right, depending on what you're applying for. So it could be a cover letter if you're applying for a job. And yes, I tell all students, you always have a cover letter, even if it's just a student job or application, unless it prohibits you from having a cover letter, please have one. Or this could be an essay, right? If you're applying for program, you have a personal statement or something like that to talk about yourself and your goals. So some technical advice. Please, just like the CV, it should be organized so we can find things. Like I said, remember the checking off of the minimum and desirable qualifications. But similarly, just like organization, you also want to have good writing, right? You don't want to lose your story because of bad writing. And especially if you're applying for a program, your personal statement is not only conveying your hopes, dreams, goals, but it also is demonstrating how well you can write. If you can't even write concisely or coherently about your professional goals, then it really does make us worried about how well you're going to be able to write once you get into the program, because like it or not, grad school is a lot about writing, right? So organization, good writing, and then please, please, please follow directions. If it tells you to do this and have 4 sections, please have 4 sections. Our application has 4 bullet points or questions for the essay. Please, I tell the students, yes, put number 1, type out the question, answer question 1. Then type out question number 2, answer question number 2. Instead of making us hunt for it, please make it easy for us. Put things in the same order that appear in the instructions. And then finally, especially for job applications, remember I said minimum qualification desirable. The best practice is to run down them one by one and say how you meet each one. I meet this because I have this kind of degree. Number two, I have this because got this kind of experience. To just, again, make things clear for the reviewer. And then finally, personalization. So just like you want your story to be organized, you want it to be coherent, you also want it to be personalized to who you're applying to. So if you're writing a letter, please address it to that agency. Otherwise, if you don't know a person, just say review committee or search committee. It's good to reference the agency throughout and show you did a little bit of homework, right? You know what the program is about. If you're applying to University of Hawaii, you know that we're community engaged research is one of our top priorities, community service and that kind of thing. So a little bit of homework that you did. But please be aware in that red underline part, be aware of copying and pasting for multiple applications. And we see this at least once in every round of faculty hiring. Somebody will have copied and pasted and not edited. And it'll at least say University of Hawaii at the top, but during the body somewhere, it'll say University of some other place that they're applying. Oops, it's an honest mistake, but not one that you want to make on such an important application. So like I said, personalized, but of course, all those places in the application where you personalize, make sure to switch it out every time you apply to a different place. And then finally, you want to personalize the job or program or opportunity that you're applying for. So how can you show that you did homework about the place or the program or the job and have at least some of that background? Because at the bottom in the red there, it says the really excellent statement or letter will align the two sides of the Venn diagram, right? Not only am I awesome, I'm great, I've got all these skills, but I'm exactly what you're looking for. I exactly fit the job or the program or whatever it is that they're looking for. Because you can be awesome. We have a lot of awesome people apply, but it's just not the quite fit, right? The type of skills they have or the specific niche topic that they're looking at is not quite the fit. But if you can in your story make that argument for us so that we're not inventing it or trying to rationalize, right? How does this person fit? But if you can articulate that for us in the application or the essay, that makes that thought process for us much easier. Like, oh, I was a little bit on the fence, but wow, this person made a really good case about why they should come here. And so let's move them to the next step. Let's interview them or let's move them on to a visit or whatever that is. And it's your story, right? You take ownership of your story to let us know how those things fit together. All right. So last thing I just wanted to say is asking for kudos. So you've all got to ask for letters of rec or references. So just some pointers. So be strategic about your selections and please ask in advance. Please give us any information that will be helpful in drafting. Like, what are you applying for? Give me a copy of your CV, etc. Because I always want to customize my letter for where I'm writing to. And if appropriate, you can actually ask the person, would it be easier if I send you a draft to work off of? Most of us are like, yes, please. Give me something that I can actually tweak. So you can personalize things based on your relationship with that person. If there's forms, please, it's great. It's more work for you, but it's great for us, especially if we're juggling a lot of different letters. If you can pre-do some of the things, if you can pre-fill the forms, it really helps us out to get it out the door faster. It makes it a lot easier for the person giving the reference. Okay. So that's what I've got. And don't worry, you'll get everything. I know it's a lot of information. I'll just open it up to any questions or comments. I know some of you might have very specific comments, so I'll hang out for a bit. But yeah, let me know if there's anything generally that I can answer. But otherwise, I'll send everything to Allison And if you're going to APHA, I will see you there in 2 weeks.